Are we live now? I can't tell because there's no monitor out here. Actually, it's really hard to
You
tell.
got the little thing in your ear.
Well, that's what Vinny says I'm live, but I don't know.
There's
It could be totally fake. I'm not going to try to play it on my.
Would you want some water?
Oh, I planned ahead. You don't have any.
No,
sorry. You just talked for 2 hours
I was drinking fake water for quite a bit.
All right, so I think we are live according to the chat room, and I should probably tweet this, but I don't think I have it on my.
I told people.
Okay,
I told the people.
We got 500 people in the chat room.
We've got them here. I think we also have the Giant Bomb chat too. We are having some technical stuff, I think, with screen at the moment, but top men are on the case. It already seems like it's moving a little bit faster, but if you do run into trouble, we do have it running sort of in both chats.
People are hearing. For the record, I'm in the screen.com/chat, but we'll probably mostly be taking calls today rather than chat room questions. But you never know if I see something funny.
Rory, what am I doing here?
I don't know. People ask me what the story was today about this because obviously M. Night Shyamalan doesn't have any movies coming out right away. But a couple weeks back or a couple months back, I was thinking about what to do for some premium content for Screen, and I thought maybe doing a podcast book club would be fun. And this is the first book that came to mind because I had heard about it and wanted to read it. It's The Man Who Heard Voices, or How M. Night Shyamalan Risked His Career on a Fairy Tale. It's about the making of Lady in the Water, but don't worry if you haven't read it. No big deal.
Yeah, there's nothing sort of crazy in it.
Just be familiar with M. Night Shyamalan.
The big thing, I remember I read this book because I like to help out on the sites and stuff, and you and Joey had sort of asked me to do one of your defending your movie type deals.
Sure.
And so I went about it way too hard. I read a book, I did some research, and then I realized that I could not write like a script. That was
tough.
hard.
It's tough.
I have a horrible one, and I just read it myself at home, and it was like the most pedantic thing. It was almost like a little bit of parts of Lady of the Water itself. And then
Yeah. My problem with script writing when I write scripts for video features that I never sound them out with my voice. Mm-hmm. And then I always wind up with like expialidociously, it's nothing but a series of S sounds and X sounds.
Tongue twisters.
It's terrible for me, so I need to learn how to do that. But of course I write them like 2 a.m. the day before they're due. So what you do. But now this is basically
I feel good because I read that book and now I can talk about it.
It is an interesting book, and maybe we should just go ahead and start talking about it. Again, we're just going to talk about the book for a bit. You don't really have you don't have to have read the book.
Anything about the book.
If you've read it, you'll probably get more out of it out of discussion than other people. But no big deal. It's okay if you haven't read it. But
so M. Night Shyamalan, director of
Signs, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable.
Got his big break with Sixth Sense, big, huge movie.
And then he did The Village. All those were for Disney.
Yes.
I think. And then he wanted to make Lady in the Water, which you actually have kind of a good opinion of, right? I'm going to keep
I like Lady in the Water. I like Lady in the Water for the reason that I like most of his other movies, in that I've seen quite a few movies in my day. And there's a certain amount that novelty will go far with me. If I can see something that I kind of haven't seen before, I'd say I fall to sap maybe a little bit more than you do.
Sure. No, trust me, I will cry. Drop of a hat. Sappy movie.
So I like I like those aspects of him.
He's unashamedly sentimental in some of his films,
and I don't
especially
mind. I think people sometimes focus on the twist stuff a little bit too much. I don't really care so much about the twist stuff. I just like that he makes sort of visually striking movies that at least have some sort of agenda, which,
especially this one.
Yes.
It seems like especially Lady in the Water has some kind of agenda he wants to talk about.
It seems very personal, I would say, of his movies.
Yeah, I would say that's very true. I mean, so the story is he kind of had, the story in the book is that he wanted to make this movie with Disney. He made every movie he's made, Signs of Village, all pretty successful. And then he came to them with a script, and he's very secretive about his scripts. He only gives it to directly the president. It goes
through a process where like a secretary will have it. It goes in a limo, then it ends up in a plane, and then
little briefcase with a hand cape on it.
If they read it on the spot, if it's not read on the spot, there's trouble. There's all kinds of stuff.
It's kind of a paranoid thing that it goes through for people to read the script. So the Disney people read it, they fly it to Philadelphia, and they basically say, they say they have issues with the script, and then Shyamalan basically says, well, I'm sorry, we're not going to make this movie together. And then he basically kind of flies off the rails, I thought, at least in depicted in the book.
You can tell that he is an artiste.
Mm-hmm.
He takes himself somewhat seriously. Looks at it and said, "Look, I don't." I think he'd had some success before there, and if people weren't super confident about his work, then he didn't necessarily want to work with them. And so
exactly, if there wasn't 100% confidence, he does not want to have anything to do. And he was.
And this book too, you should sort of mention it was written by sort of a
sports writer.
Yeah, a sports writer, but the guy had sort of full access from M. Night himself to sort of go around and sort of document the process of making a movie.
He was on the set apparently quite a bit for difficult parts of the shoot. It sometimes is a little blurry whether or not he was actually there for times or whether he was actually just kind of reporting back. But it's a kind of a fascinating book. And one of the things, if you read about it on Amazon, which is where I get all my book info now, a lot of the reviews say it's kind of a sycophantic portrait of. But I thought it felt much more honest about his peccadillos, and it didn't feel like it was sucking up to Shyamalan as much as it was as kind of
saying he's a unique dude.
Yeah, without necessarily pointing out every single flaw in the book. He definitely comes across as kind of a martinet and a strict dude. So.
Yeah, it's just saying, look, he's a director. He's got his director quirks. He's a guy that's got his sort of hang-ups and baggage and all that kind of stuff. But it at least seems to go about it with a real sort of reverence for his craft.
So speaking specifically about Lady in the Water, we'll take a question after we get our first little conversation done. How about that? And again, your questions when we are going to be taking calls in. I don't know how that works. Whiskey Media on Skype, basically.
Whiskey Media on Skype.
Okay, I don't have the number.
There's a number that's probably on the screen as well.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe there is. I don't have my I don't have my visual playing. So, what was I going to say?
You were talking about Lady in the Water.
Oh, I was going to say, first off, if you feel like calling in about anything Shyamalan related, feel free.
Yeah, and just, the background of it, that movie came out, was basically a huge bomb.
It was not successful at all.
And it is thought of extremely poorly.
Yeah.
I'd say it's pretty rare. I talk about that movie because I like it. I like myth. I love American myth.
Okay.
And
like Never-Ending Story, kind of.
I love Spielberg movies. I loved not 8mm. What was the one last
Super
year?
8.
Super 8. Love Super 8.
Super 8.
Give me little kids. Give me people believing in dreams.
The end of that movie, man, I was crying my butt off.
I love that kind of stuff.
I don't know if that crying comes out, but. But Lady in the Water to me, we'll talk about it very quickly and we'll get to some calls. But Lady in the Water to me felt. My two problems, I guess, were the rules for the world were so complicated and obtuse and stacking on top of each other as the movie went along. Who's going to play what role? What does everybody do? And then it becomes kind of this kind of a shell game as to how we're going to get to the end of the film.
He leads you on his path and he tricks you, and it's not even like normal tricks where it's like, hey, if you didn't see this, he's like, no, that wasn't it at all.
Yeah.
So he's leading you.
There's not even clues, basically.
It's fun, and I think like the whole the fun of his movies is you go into them like trying to figure them out. And sort of seeing little groups, and when you hear those rules, you try to, it's like watching Clue. You're trying to see sort of where it's going to end up, and I don't necessarily care that if it sort of makes sense in the end. I just kind of liked the journey of the movie and sort of seeing what was going. But probably your second part that you had,
you probably know what it is.
I feel the same way, that he cast himself.
He cast himself as the savior of the world.
Savior of the world. But here's the weird thing. I think he did a good job acting.
He's not bad in that role. He's not bad. And to be fair, the movie does have a fair number of decent performances. Actually, pretty good performances in it. I didn't care. I don't think Story. I don't think Bryce Dallas Howard, who I know you, Bryce, fell in love with her in The Village. She's adorable in that movie. Here, I thought she wasn't given as much to too airy and ethereal and fairy-ish to really be.
But that's exactly what she is.
Sure.
I mean, what else are you going to expect? She's a water nymph. She's a mermaid. That's exactly like her role. It's like she's fish out of water. She doesn't. I mean, that's kind of the way that I looked at it. It was like, oh, that made sense.
Okay.
So,
well, I think we do have a caller on the line. We're going to take it. I think I heard Luke Long.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Luke. How are you?
All right, how about you guys?
Not too bad. I want to turn down my headset real quick. Go ahead. What's your question?
Well, my question is, can M. Night Shyamalan make those great movies that he was known for at the beginning of his career? For example,
Signs or yeah, no, we can hear you.
Yeah.
It's so your question was,
Unbreakable and
can he go back to the question?
Yeah.
He has had a bizarre. If you look at the famous Rotten Tomatoes meter. Okay, Luke, thank you for your question. We're going to answer it. We'll see you in the chat room, I suppose.
But yeah, so the question is, can he come back? Like he's been a guy. A lot of people sort of see his best work as behind him.
Yes, very much so.
That
like almost his first two films are kind of the acknowledged.
A lot of people don't like Unbreakable sort of at all. You know, his populist films are more. I mean, Signs was definitely a huge movie that way overshadowed Unbreakable. Unbreakable was a big early weekend movie where it made its movie mostly just on
Bruce Willis.
Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
And so when Unbreakable came out, I think that was the first time people kind of turned on him a little bit. It's kind of become a cult hit.
Do you think Unbreakable was all a dream? Do you know the story behind that theory, where he is on the train and he puts his head against the window and he closes his eyes for like a second? It's kind of a weird theory, but it's kind of a fun one.
I sort of take it as, you know, what it's presented to me.
It's also kind of a fable too, though.
Yeah, it's certainly my favorite movie of his. I'd put it right behind the original Superman as my favorite ever.
Wow.
Superhero story.
Wow, damn.
And I love the original Superman, but I just sort of, you know, it's got the father-son stuff. It's really subtle, and it's a really slow build movie.
The situation with him and his wife in that movie is handled really well too.
Yeah,
I thought like they have their sleeping in separate bedrooms. You know, something's weird, but it doesn't. It doesn't throw it back and
I just love it. You know, anybody who follows comic books at all, like you can just see so much like. There's so much attention to detail with like how the shots are set up, the colors that are used,
and the scenes too. Like the part with his kid with the gun, and the breakfast table, and like, well, I never keep it loaded while you're sitting there.
But again, I always see Shyamalan really. He to me is just. A disciple of Spielberg, and you see that always, uses children really well, always has that sort of sense of wonder, and it's just that, American myth stuff. And I feel like Spielberg, he had those early movies. Like if you look at Spielberg and just sort of go back in time and look at him, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that's a weird movie. Like
it is
and that's not like I think it's the least like blockbustery of sort of his movies. It's like one that you'd expect. I think it's close to like Unbreakable, where it's like just this really slow sort of thought out movie about like, just a dude in his mind.
But E.T. is the same way too, because E.T. has. We did a video on screen on E.T. If you ever want to take a look at it, E.T. it can be taken. It's really hard for me to take that movie literally. Not to get off on Spielberg, but E.T. is almost impossible to take literally because there's so much metaphor in that film for becoming an adult and divorce and the famous part is that you never see an adult above the waist except for his mom almost the entire film until they all come in at the end and do the spaceship weird stuff. So, but to get back to Shyamalan, can he go back to doing the movies that he has done in the past? Obviously, I think. Acknowledged to have the first few movies are his strongest, and it kind of goes through. The Village was the first movie to get mixed, and then it was Lady in the Water, which was poorly received. The Happening, especially poorly received, and Airbender was kind of the.
I don't mind The Happening. I mean, I don't think it's certainly not his best film, but I think a lot of times when you get thought of as like one of those. As one of those directors, those guys have a style and their thing. Like you're not really allowed to go out and do, sort of just fun stuff that you want to do. Like very clearly a B movie. Not, I mean, to me, I don't think it was ever supposed to be thought of like in a real serious tone.
I blame him. Well, do you
I think poorly cast.
I'm not even so sure poorly cast is poorly directed of the actors in it. Because in order to have that kind of wide-eyed, we make fun of Mark Wahlberg for the "what no" thing a lot. But can you get to that point in a movie where you have to part of me has to feel like that is a directorial problem because Mark Wahlberg can be effective at times.
I only think that Mark Wahlberg's effective when you put him in specific roles. Like he's got to be
the tough guy.
Yeah, well, he's got to be like the tough guy, but he's also got to be somebody who is himself playing an archetype. Like he never really plays purely original. I mean, personally, I feel he's always playing like an amalgamation of characters in movies before him. So like when he's playing like Boogie Nights and all that kind of stuff, like his sort of naive goofiness.
That was kind of his first big movie, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I forget what else.
Yeah, well, he did Fear. That was his early one. They did, I think, with Reese Witherspoon, where he was like he was the kid who. He was the kid who was dating Reese Witherspoon, and the dad didn't like him. Very famously, I think early funny movie. I think it was Reese. I'm pretty sure. But yeah,
we've danced around the topic of what I think he can.
Basketball Diaries too.
Oh, okay, all right. Well,
which he did with DiCaprio. He was his buddy.
Well, we'll get back to the subject of whether or not he can make good movies in the future, because I think there's an interested party in the chat room who would have, hopefully, an answer to that question. But it's Peter from Florida on the line. Peter from Florida, how are you today?
I'm great. How about you, Matt?
Not too bad. How's Florida? Cold?
It is 68 today here in Orlando. So the one week we have of winter is now over.
Bundle up. What is your question, sir?
I've actually never seen The Sixth Sense, but I think everyone knows the twist about Bruce Willis or whatever.
Yes,
that's been memed.
He's gay.
I'm not. I'm just kind of curious. Can I still go back and watch that? Because I mean, I don't know. Lots of people I know say they like that movie, but is it kind of ruined for me? Or
thank you, Peter, for the question. We'll answer it right now.
Absolutely.
I think it definitely
great movie.
It is a movie that when everybody saw it in the theater, that was the reason that movie made so much money, is that people went back and saw it twice.
Yeah, because
there are a lot of scenes in that film where you don't understand it. You have to think back on how the thing for me was always him sitting with the kid's mom in the sitting room, like when the kid comes in and they're just looking at each other. And then you realize when you go back and see it the second time, they never say anything to each other, which is really weird. That he's obviously she didn't even see him. She's just like staring off in the.
He got another Wahlberg connection because you have Donnie who starts.
Which I always the movie. Yes, I always got those two mixed up.
New Kids on the Block, Donnie.
He was in his Stark Under.
But yeah, excellent. I mean, and I think people saw it, and it's really weird. You think of it like in film. There's just not that many known directors. And he was known, immediately.
Right away.
Like, people saw that not as, hey, this is a great Bruce Willis role. Like, people saw those things. They're like, this is sort of the coming of a brand new director that is going to be one of the big greats. You saw that from like the movies afterwards. Yeah. They were always, written, produced, and directed. M. Night.
And he has a what's the term for it? Couriership of his own. They say in the book when he did a first movie for the Weinsteins and it was really poorly received and they kind of chopped it up a little bit and stuff like that. But he wrote a script and he basically said, well, I need to have directorial. I need to direct it. I need to have final cut and everything like that. And he told his agent, well, sell it, but for nothing less than $1 million. And he went out and got it from, I think, Disney people, I believe. I'm trying to think if it was Paramount he was with before, but I think it was Disney first, and then he went to Paramount for Lady in the Water, if I'm correct. So he's always known that he has the book kind of makes it clear, he's always known that he's been a talented person. He's kind of been driven to protect himself after the first. The first movie he made was actually not The Sixth Sense. It was something like Wide Awake with Rosie O'Donnell or something like that.
Yeah, and it was something like set in, I can't remember. But there were definitely more spiritual stuff
Wide Awake,
involved.
Yes.
And that's something that's always like very, very much in his movies. There's always that spiritualism. Even you look at something sort of, with the source material of like The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
Like it comes out like even more so probably than his other movies, which you wouldn't believe, just from
Last Airbender. Wow, that was a weird experience. But so to get back to Peter's question, yes, Sixth Sense is definitely worth watching if you've never seen it. again, that's a movie that is the pleasure there is almost seeing it the second time. Knowing the twist ahead of time, you're going to kind of be figuring it out for yourself. But it's
I'd
still
say
a really
it still
well-made movie.
remains like of his movies the most watchable to any group, like
And,
just a large group of people everybody will dig it.
And also one of the better child performances the last like 10 or 15 years. Haley Joel Osment he disappeared after AI, I think, but he's
he paid it forward.
Yeah. Wow, what a dumb movie.
You don't remember
I remember Paid Forward. I remember seeing the end of that movie and just kind of laughing my ass off.
You know, I think the fun thing about reading this book was, you know, it's very much a fly on the wall sort of deal, because
it felt like a kind of a running commentary track for the production of a film.
He was sitting on the plane on the way to selling the script and sort of getting the reaction out of it, and you know, then seeing it actually get made, and who was getting cast, and sort of all these different parts of the process, and
also the production stuff. Like if you've never read it and you want to, it's actually, apart from the subject matter, apart from the film itself, it's actually a pretty good kind of almost not an oral history, but a way to look at the production of a film from the very beginning of the process all the way through the final cut of it.
Yeah, and the cool thing that I thought was, you know, it's very much because these people are working, you know, so closely with each other over time. You definitely get the sort of familial relationships that just sort of naturally build between, you know, a grip and you know, and a lead actress, and just sort of weird stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting to have watched the film and then come back to read the book, because the entire apartment building in the film was constructed for the film. It's all set, which I didn't know. I thought they had like found some old.
Yeah, of course. He always or mostly shot all around. Philadelphia.
It was that the entire set was in Philadelphia. So I don't think they even all of his films. Yeah, they're all Philadelphia, born and raised. Bad joke. Well, while we're waiting for another caller, we started talking a little bit about Last Airbender, which you saw it. Correct?
I saw it with you.
You did, yes.
Because I was really excited, because you know that I really like his movies.
Yeah.
So I was like, I wonder what he's going to do with a blockbuster.
I was really looking forward to it because I had heard about the CGI scenes with the action, and they were apparently going to be mostly in long takes with like 4 or 5 minutes. Not 4 or 5 minutes, but, you know, 30 seconds, a minute of kind of sweeping long takes and everything like that. But it wound up being not very good. And that's not my opinion. That is my opinion. But Rotten Tomatoes at 6% for Last Airbender, which is... like The Devil Inside is basically as good.
Did you know a lot of Airbender stuff going on?
I tried to watch like the first episode, and I don't like kids. So.
Yeah, so I always wonder with things like that whether.
And I've heard amazing things about it. You can stop writing me your angry tweets. I've heard all the stuff about Avatar: The Last Airbender. I've heard it is amazing and well worth watching.
But it's always funny going into those like large franchises and not knowing sort of a whole lot of what you're getting into.
Yeah, true enough.
I even felt that way sort of with the what's the Fincher movie, the last one, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Even though that's not like a large franchise, it's like, man, this is so big, this is so like all encompassing, everybody knows everything about this, and here I am going into it, and I didn't know if I just didn't get it. You know, it's like, what is the like fire? You know,
it is.
I felt like an old person kind of walking in there and being like, fire people and sand and
It was a lot of backstory to compress into a film. I'm trying to think of the other one that I saw recently that was very kind of overwhelming with story. I'm not going to dwell on it because I'm really bad about just thinking for a few minutes. But again, if you want to call in, it's Whiskey Media on Skype. But Last Airbender to me was... Gosh, I don't know. We saw it last summer, right?
It was long. It came out. That's what I remember.
It was like two hour.
It was really long,
20 at least or something like that. But it was actually kind of a hit. It made a decent amount of money, critically reviled, but was fairly popular, I suppose. Like it made like about 130 here, more overseas. So I don't know.
It's a weird one because it's not. I mean, he's always been so associated with sort of original works,
which is
coming out of it and you know, doing something with you know, as not only just a story. It's not like he's adapting a book. I mean, there's like a universe there.
Yeah,
and it's sort of getting into the sort of Peter Jackson and the Lucasy sort of realm of you know, movie making.
Well, it's weird because. What was I thinking?
That is weird.
We bought
That is weird,
We bought
Rory.
a zoo.
Cameron Crowe.
See, that was his first movie that he did without actually writing his own script as well. He kind of adapted the script as well. So,
Do you think that's something that happens after, and this is, of course, pure speculation on our part, do you think that's something that happens after somebody has a critical failure? Because Elizabethtown was sort of also thought in that same way, where it was, like Lady in the Water, where it was, you could tell that was a very sort of personal work. And
I'm curious. I'd be curious. That's not something you can really speculate without having him here to interrogate. But I would not be surprised if that was the case. Kind of one of those kind of.
It's like a vacation.
Yeah, kind of. So I think we have David from San Jose on the line. Is that correct, David? I'm assuming I got it wrong and he's offended.
Or he's setting up his mic.
Dave from San Jose. Are you on the line, sir?
I am. Hello.
Yay! How are you two? San Jose is like 68 over there, right?
What, the temperature?
Yeah.
It's a little cooler than that.
Celsius.
That's right. It's very hot here.
Dave, what's your question, sir?
Well, I wanted to talk a little about, people make the comparison between M. Night Shyamalan and George Lucas because, like, their early movies are, very well received, considered classics, and then their later movies are just terrible. But sort of with Lucas, you can look back on it and say, well, he was just never a very good director, right? It's like the first Star Wars, people talk about it, was saved in editing. Then the second one he didn't direct, and then when he goes back to the director's chair, they're terrible. With M. Night Shyamalan, I mean, Sixth Sense was written and directed by him.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just kind of more baffling with Shyamalan, and just like, what happened really is the question,
It's thank you for your question, Dave. We'll try to discuss that a little bit. What did happen with Shyamalan? I don't think this book is meant to give. This book is in the midpoint of kind of the critical collapse, at least. I don't think Shyamalan would say that there's any kind of quality collapse in his films.
And I think reading this book, it's pretty much where it's more of like in the surprise era, and you can see some reactionary stuff. I mean, look no further than Lady in the Water and what's that? Bob Balaban, who's in there as the critic.
Oh, yeah, the critic. I meant to bring that up, too.
Yeah, and so you have this critic in there who
the most immature part of the film to me.
Yeah, no, and there's a criticism on criticism there. And
which never works well. Never makes you look good as a director or a writer.
Especially when you're in the movie.
Think of, the other, so Bob Balaban, the critic here, I forget who he's played by, but so there's a movie critic who comes to the apartment. He's portrayed as being very pompous and kind of stuck up, and then eventually gets eaten by a dog. But he gives that stupid monologue about, well, this would be the part in a movie where I turn around and he just barely escapes. Really fourth wall-y stuff, which I found kind of immediately just broke up all the tension in the film.
I mean, I thought it didn't really fit all that much, which was weird because, like we were talking about when he was playing... when he's playing sort of the savior of the world.
Yeah.
I didn't mind that stuff as much because I thought he was a good actor.
He wasn't bad.
I liked this stuff with him and his sister.
His sister,
like
really
those
sweet
scenes,
conversations.
in the laundry room are great.
Yeah.
They're like really well done and it's really touching and it's just like normal sort of human interaction work.
Yeah. I never mind necessarily when directors cast themselves as actors. Like even Martin Scorsese did it in Taxi Driver. He said, I need to have this experience. I need to know what it's like. Do you find it weird that he does it every film or almost every film?
No, because I think the thing that everybody used to think that he does was the Hitchcock. Sort of, he loved to show himself just as like the cameo. So, in The Village, he's the sort of cop that you see, through the glass, as a reflection in the glass.
That was a good little subtle one.
Yeah. In Signs, he's the guy that kills all of...
which was his stiffest role.
Yeah, he was the driver.
He was really...
Yeah, but it's fine. He didn't have much to do in there. And I always loved that part. Like, I always... it made me... It's kind of that wink to the audience that's like, look, I care about making movies. Like, I love it so much. Like, I can't help myself. I want to be a part of it as well. And I love that he always gave himself... Even when he gave himself, like... a big focus character like that.
Yeah.
The fact that it's like a barely speaking role, like these little tiny roles, they were still major kind of characters in it.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was really cool because he's kind of pointing to himself and being like, dude, I'm a major character in this movie. I made these movies.
What's your favorite portrayal of a film critic in a movie? Or least favorite? The other two big ones I know of, like kind of spiteful ones, were in Godzilla, the remake of Godzilla, where the mayoral and the mayor candidate were named Siskel and Ebert, which was really shitty and spiteful because like, Roland Emmerich, you're a great filmmaker. And the other one was in Willow, of all things, which sounds like a weird one. But did you know the two-headed monster was called Siskbert?
Oh, really?
Yes, it was called Siskbert by George Lucas. Again, doing the classy thing. It just never seems classy at all. And I realize it.
Well, at least then it's funny.
It's kind of funny, but I realize I'm kind of prejudiced now that I actually review films on the internet. But even before then, even before I started this job, I would never have thought that.
I think it's okay when you do it in that goofball way. This is not a goofball way.
No.
This is pretty much like I'm making a stand against sort of people who critique things for a living.
So there was a question in the chat about what. Oh, we have a Ryan from Houston on the radio. Ryan, are you there, sir?
Yeah.
Hi, Ryan. How are you? How's Houston?
Houston-y.
68 degrees, warm and sunny. What's your question, Ryan?
So yeah, I was watching the movie and I realized how kind of weird it was, but I was wondering whether if they made the movie in Japanese or French, it would be a better movie because of how those foreign styles are. It's more like when it's like a foreign film.
It is kind of like Pan's
That's not
Labyrinth
bad.
or
Thank
something
you.
like
Thank
that.
you, Ryan. I appreciate
if you
it.
Think about it.
That's actually not a bad question.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because you'd lose the dialogue-y stuff that you think is like forced.
Well, the part of it, a lot of it is kind of in a foreign language. The NARF stuff, I forget the name of the
Well,
monsters.
it has to open with like a dictionary. I mean, a good portion of this book is just talking about how they had such a hard time sort of opening that
Getting
movie.
people in.
And
They didn't have the animated stuff in the beginning until fairly long into editing, I don't think.
Yeah, so they had to create this little 2-minute reel that sort of describes the fairy tale and gives like parts of those rules.
Yeah, and then, but again, the things for me is that the rules are inconsistent. I suppose, like I understand that they're being interpreted, but people don't necessarily entirely understand them, and story is not allowed to talk about them and everything like that. But it seems like it's a very kind of.
But like fairy tales are kind of always like that.
I don't know if that's always true. Like, I don't know. Like
they're always like rule based. You gotta think of like Wizard of Oz.
Sure.
There's tons of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of rules, but then most of the time they are kind of portrayed clearly, and you know what you're getting into. Here, it's just kind of like a layering on top of.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not saying it's. I think the movie definitely has its faults. But,
sure.
It beats going to 99% of the movies that I go to, where I know everything that's going to happen like ahead of time. You always know the conclusions. Like I just love the idea of like having. Like the main character in this is like a broken dude, like as broken as you can get.
There's a shot in the beginning of it that I really love where you come up on the back of his head and it's completely out of focus, and he raises his wristwatch.
Perfectly named to Cleveland Heap, like such a great, like what a horrible, like destroyed man that is.
So yeah, and Paul Giamatti apparently was one of his first big starring roles, at least in a big budget film. This was like a $75 million movie.
Because who's gonna hire a balding, chubby dude?
Nobody ever, apparently. He's a great character actor. He's great in this too. It's just a weird choice for the not a weird choice. I can't even complain about that. He's one of the.
I think it's a weird choice to make a main character that stutters through it, because people get annoyed. You know, like it's hard to watch. Like you feel bad for him pretty much the whole movie.
Yeah, but he talks the story perfectly well. I think right. So it's a good. I don't even have this thing in my ear anymore. If you're playing along at home, these earpiece things, I don't know how anybody ever gets them sick in their ear because they just slide right out. Maybe I
don't even know what you're doing. You guys always look like Secret Service agents when you're.
It's like I feel like I am, like I'm in Signs or something, like or Signs. I don't know what
What's your favorite movie of his?
Of his? Gosh. I have a soft spot for Signs. I will admit. I don't know if it's my favorite one of his, but again, I'm not. the faith stuff is very kind of bizarre and weird at the end of the film, but the scares, the closet scare scene where you see the alien go across the TV for the first time,
slow pans, like such slow pans.
Good stuff. It is a movie that I found really frightening.
And again, that's why I think he's so much like Spielberg, because you look at Jaws, like you look at those early forays, like Poltergeist. There's not much being shown.
No,
and it's like this
it's
is the exact it's the exact same style.
That's why I like Signs a lot, because it is. If you ever hear me ranting about horror movies, it is mostly the sound that gets me in horror movies. So I believe I heard Adrian from Chicago is on the line. How are you, Adrian?
I'm fine. I'm fine. How about yourself?
Not too bad. I heard you wanted to talk about Unbreakable.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite beginnings in a movie of all time. Like, I really love that beginning of the movie. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I really don't know. Just wanted to get stuck. Right
on. Thank you, Adrian. Refresh me as to the beginning of Unbreakable. That's not the pre-train, right?
There's it's the early bit. Okay, so here, which I think is pretty similar. I think if we're just going to talk about the beginning of that movie,
sure,
has the awesome premise, has by far my favorite trailer that has ever been in cinema.
Wow.
Which is, they just do that first scene, or that very early scene, which he's sitting there and he's speaking with the doctor.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, how you doing? You have no cuts? You've got no bruises. How do you feel? He's like, I'm fine. He's like, why are you looking at me like this? And he's like, I'm looking at you like this.
You've never been sick.
He's like, I'm looking at you like this because you just survived a train wreck.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody else died, and you don't have a scratch on you.
Yeah.
And then they cut the trailer, and they don't even describe the rest of the movie. I think everybody felt they got tricked by like what the actual movie was, because they were like, they just wanted the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, it's so perfect. Like it's just, it goes back to that sort of Hitchcock style filmmaking, which is you can build a movie just on a premise and carry it for 2 hours. Like, I love that he does that. And it's like he's willing to take those risks. So,
yeah, Unbreakable. I haven't seen Unbreakable in so long, but I want to again, because it wasn't one of those movies that I think people were expecting Sixth Sense 2. And to be fair, the pressure on him to deliver the Sixth Sense 2 after your movie made like $700 million.
And the fun part of that movie, too, is that the origin story is not of the hero, but of the villain.
Yeah.
Which is like super cool way to like do a comic movie.
Call
where it's
me
like,
Mr. Glass.
Yeah, you don't, nobody makes a movie about, Lex Luthor and how Lex Luthor got to be how he was. They always make the movie on like the origin of Superman.
This was kind of before too the big. Well, they do a lot on Broadway, like the Wicked, and they're doing,
telling the perspective from the bad guy.
Yeah, they're doing. They do a lot now on, and I think they're trying to make a few movies like that too coming up here. So, I think it might have been before the earliest ones of those. There's a couple of novels I remember that got turned into Broadway plays. I think so. I haven't seen Unbreakable in a long time.
Yeah,
it's one of probably the. I think I saw it in theater. I don't think I've seen it
since.
Has
a really good overhead shot, framing. Guy always does like lots of framing shots, and just good stuff where it spun the camera around. He's looking at the comic book, like going through it. Just love that.
It has some really. I remember like security cam shots where the guys open the door and the murderer comes in, and it's like really brutal and kind of raw too. So,
more long takes too. Like,
I love my long takes.
Yeah.
I was watching The Happening a little bit. And again, the thing I like about Shyamalan is that he can be really fucking scary when he doesn't try to explain a lot. Lady in the Water is not a scary movie at all. Like, they have the dogs and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's some bits.
But the beginning parts of Unbreakable, the kind of breakdown of society scenes where people start walking backwards and you have no clue. Do you think those movies are better when you don't know what the hell's going on? Especially the twist ones?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's why I call that, when I was talking about Unbreakable and talking about that trailer, and why I think it's the best, is because it did exactly what a trailer should do. It's marketing for the movie. It gets you hooked, and you want to figure out what that is, but it didn't tell me anything about that movie. And me talking about it right now, if you haven't seen that movie, it's not like anything you'd miss, because it's the first 5 minutes of that movie.
I don't think we've even explained what the twist really is. I don't think we have. So if you haven't seen Unbreakable and you want to get the Shyamalan action on, well, we're checking out. It's
that one's my favorite, of the bunch.
It's easy to say Sixth Sense, but we haven't talked about The Village much either.
We both like The Village, but I think we both like it for. I think that's the time where he reaches kind of into kind of Mammoty dialogue territory.
Mammoty, really?
Oh yeah, I think
That's deep.
That's definitely a
David
wordy,
Mamet, not all Mammoty. I don't think a lot of people would get the Mammoty reference there.
But that's a movie where it's most of the time is two characters sitting and talking to each other on stoops.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember that movie much more fondly in the theater than when I went to go back and see it again. I kind of felt like it was a little overcooked.
I still like it. The only parts I don't like about it so much are I think Adrian Brody is a little over the top.
Yeah.
In his Simple Man. I'm biased. Like William Hurt is probably my favorite actor ever.
He's good.
So like anytime I see him, I'm done.
Some little bits and pieces are here and there. Like when God, who's the main character in that? It was Joaquin Phoenix, right?
Joaquin.
I don't know how to say it. Joaquin.
He's his American Indian brother.
It's an interesting film, but the language I think was kind of what I got it the first time I saw it, and the second time I saw it, it felt a little bit too much. Like I understand the setting of it and everything like that. A lot of people also said that they saw the twist coming well before.
Yeah, I saw it pretty early, and it didn't bother me at all.
I didn't see it at all.
Yeah, I was fine with it, and that's another movie that it's got its scares. Like it definitely has those slow. He loves those sort of slow camera pan scares where it's like, I'm going to show you every detail of this because most horror movies they flash by because they don't want to show you. Like if you look at the monster too much, you'll see it's not a monster.
Yeah,
where he loves to do the
which
slow
is kind
pan.
of the point of that movie. So
do the slow pan, and you can look at it as deep as you want, but just show it for a second.
I do like his films when he tries to be scary because I think he does it really well. Again, go back to Signs, the creepy sounds on a cornfield just creeps me out more than seeing a monster coming barreling through a cornfield to me. Like unknown sounds, not knowing where they come from, not knowing the explanation there is kind of fucking terrifying to me. And that's why The Happening is a weird one too for that reason because you see everything that's going to happen. People fucking kill themselves and shit, but you don't know what's causing it. Not knowing what's causing things, I think maybe I'm just like I need to know everything. So,
and I think that's the funny part. Like pretty much all of his movies, you're very very interested in. The first half, and I think a lot of people sometimes they'll get pissed off if the answer's not good enough for them. Like if they figure it out. Certainly, The Happening, that one I wasn't as happy with.
No.
Like here's the reasoning for it.
Plants.
Trees.
Yeah.
Wind and stuff, and it's okay. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't like. He holds it back, and sometimes you don't like it when he sort of actually gives you the big reveal.
To be fair to him, I think going back to the comparison with George Lucas, I think they both have huge expectations placed on them, and maybe that is one of the reasons he wanted to do The Last Airbender or something like that, just trying to get away from that for a little bit. Of course, he's working with Whiskey Meter friend Gary Whitta on his next film, so I didn't have any that I didn't even think I knew that when I signed this book for the book club thing. So, Gary, I hope the movie's really good. Honestly, I do. I think M. Night Shyamalan, again, people talk about Lucas as well. Like, when can he do this?
I'm excited about it. You know why? Because it's more of that myth stuff.
Love
it.
I think you and I are both really upbeat and optimistic about film. I want everything to be really good. It's not always that way, but I don't hold many grudges against directors, especially like there are very few people like I don't watch Roman Polanski stuff because he's kind of did horrible shit in the past. But apart from that, like I want every movie that I go see to be really good. I don't have any people. I think M. Night Shyamalan is hip to hate in a lot of ways now.
I think everybody's allowed to, and that's like why I look at him like that Spielberg style. It's like who's going back and watching like 1941? Like I think he's kind of in that stage where. He's got his money and he went through his troubles, and there's probably a lot of pressure in that, and hopefully he gets to sort of work his way out of it. But I personally will go to every one of his movies just because it's always going to be something different. Like they're never going to be based on just your run-of-the-mill sort of plots.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way with Soderbergh, where you guys were talking about him before on I think on the chat. But Soderbergh, I know whenever I go to see him, he's going to have stuff that works throughout all of his films. They're always going to be really different too. So, looking forward to Haywire this weekend.
Yeah,
I'm actually really looking forward to that movie. So.
I have weirdly started to believe that Che is his best movie.
I'm going to pimp that number one more time. It's Whiskey Media at Skype, on Skype. I guess it's on the screen right now if you guys want to call in. And I'm also taking some calls through the, if you want to send me questions in the chat. Maybe my chat actually died, though, so I'm going to have to refresh that. But Che was super interesting. I did, if you saw what I wrote about it. I wrote about it a little while back. So if you haven't seen Che, I think it's still on Netflix too, right?
Yeah.
A huge production, like
two very different movies, too.
two 2.5-hour movies, right?
Yeah.
It was something super, super long. So, and again, Che is another one of those characters that people get really up in arms about, like, oh, if you like him, you're a communist, kind of stuff like that. It's very, it's not a hagiography at all. It's not a you're gonna love, you have to love Che. Like they show the criticism he got for that movie is it didn't show some of the real shit that he did, like executing people after the revolution was. He was kind of the head of execution.
Yeah, it wasn't a
stuff.
political movie or sort of anything along those lines.
Why does Rory always do that with names? I don't know what that means, but
you always do that with the names, Rory. Oh, I think it's because you pronounced it.
What am I supposed to say?
I just said Che.
Che. I don't know. I say things how I say them.
Rory, you'd be better as a foreign film, apparently.
Yeah,
that's a really interesting. I'm glad that that user called in. I'd never thought of that. Like a lot of those movies, like imagine the tone of movies changes so much as soon as you have to have subtitles.
Yeah.
That sort of when you can't understand the language and you're just looking at something and everything seems a little bit more reverent and like emotional. I would say,
yeah,
because that's all you can really judge.
Yeah, the content of the words.
And so something like, something like Lady in the Water may have worked a lot, cooler as a.
Well, if you have the DVD, you can always try it too. That's the weird thing. You can flip it onto French language track and just flip.
I wonder how the
subtitles.
stuttering is. That's what I want to see now.
That'd be bizarre to do that. Do you know in some European countries and some foreign markets they actually have one dude did the dubbing for the entire movie? Isn't that weird? I can't imagine. I don't know. If
that makes sense to me.
It makes economic sense, but like having a dude do all the female voices, I don't think I could.
No, I just mean like they always have like the the German Bruce Willis or something.
No, I mean sometimes they'll take the entire film and every character's voice will be in the say voiceover.
Really?
Like apparently that
would totally change the movie.
That would be a little bit bizarre, yeah. Che. I mean a lot of people tell me stuff about go to eat myself. So I'll do that later on. Final Dawson wants to know, did Knight get categorized as a twist ending director too early in his career? After Sixth Sense, there's no you either do your next movie with a twist ending or you don't.
And he did.
He chose to. Probably a fair amount of pressure on him to do that.
And chose to do it again after that.
The twist at the end of Signs is probably his dumbest twist.
And chose to do it again after that. So he made 4. I mean, I think a lot of people that look for that, they're not wrong in wanting it or thinking it. That's why I kind of thought Lady in the Water was so cool because it kind of tells you everything that's going to happen. It's very direct.
Yeah.
And goes about, sort of doing it.
The obfuscations.
And it's even more fantastical for it because it's like, what? What? You've been telling me this whole thing is, this big crazy dream and like you don't even understand any of it. You don't understand the real story. This can't exist. This can't exist. When am I going to get the trick that tells me,
it's actually a real girl that she's crazy.
Yeah, she's a nutso.
Escape from
exactly. It's like, nope.
Never goes there.
Big giant hawk.
We'll come down and pick him up.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap this up in about 10 more minutes. Maybe we'll take another couple calls in here a little bit. I'm trying to think back on anything else from Lady in the Water that I thought was worth discussing. Anything that you want to bring up? I mean, it is
the acting that very like I love a lot of the character actors in that. The girl who plays the Korean daughter.
Really? Not too over the top?
Oh, I love it. I don't know, man. Like I liked how over the top it was, and I love that in the book it was sort of originally cast to be like a huge
6'6", like 22-year-old.
So they talk about like the casting of it, how impossible that would be because you've got to cast like a 6'4", like
Asian girl,
thick
sort
of Asian girl, and they couldn't do it. And it was neat because it went into the backstories of like how that actress is like. How that's got to be tough being an Asian, an Asian American actor in Hollywood, and being in your 30s. Where do you go?
Well, you've heard about the whole IMDb lawsuit, right?
Mm-mm.
You ever heard about this?
No.
There was
putting the age.
Well, she signed up for IMDb Pro with a credit card, and it put her age from her credit card.
Do they know who it was?
Yeah, she eventually had to reveal her name because she sued him for it. Because apparently, and to be fair, Hollywood does have a fairly well-known record of age discrimination. Unless you're a really huge actress or actor, you're going to get called out like, "Oh, you're 31, you can't really play a 20-year-old man." So, it's an interesting book. I like it. I bought it on Amazon Prime for like $4. I think it was well worth.
It was definitely more than I thought I was going to get. I thought I was just going to get kind of like a criticism or some sort of summation of his film work.
Yeah.
And not so much here's the methodology, here's how people react around him, here's how he runs his business, here are his faults, and here are good parts. It's kind of neat.
It's interesting because the writer is not. He pretty much says, like, I don't really watch movies.
Yeah.
Like, I go out, like, maybe twice a year.
Met him at a dinner party.
Yeah, I don't... he was really transfixing me, and I figured, hey, maybe I could write a book about him. And it wound up being... my main problem with the book is that it ends before whether anybody knew the film was a success or not.
So, like, you don't get any real idea of...
the aftermath.
Yeah, exactly. Like, knowing all this.
Maybe the paperback has, like, some kind of summation. I don't know.
The sort of end of this book is pretty much like... Hey, we've gone through all these edits, we've gone through all this, focus group stuff, and the movie is finally at the state where he wanted it to be.
Yeah. And then they don't talk about the release at all. They don't talk about the premiere. They don't talk about the financials at all. So it's kind of an open-ended book.
Yeah. I remember people like hooting in the theater.
Hooting, like with joy or derision?
No, derision.
Derision.
That word.
Badness. They didn't like
it.
Yeah. Throughout the movie or at the end?
At the end.
Okay. Well, like The Devil Inside, which if you're a fan of bad endings to films, that will never be topped. I don't know if I saw it in theaters, to be honest with you. Came out in 2006.
We saw that together.
Did we?
Yeah, the Sidney Lumet one. Is that what you're talking about? Oh no, Devil Inside, the last one.
No, I was talking about Lady in the Water. I don't know if I saw this in theater. No, the Devil. No, we're talking. That's the other. A lot of devil movies.
Are you just talking with Vinny now?
No, that was the devil. The devil was the elevator one that he wrote but didn't direct.
Yeah.
Which I think that's the only one he did. It was supposed to be a series of films that he was supposed to write and not direct.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
The M. Night Shyamalan Chronicles, which I don't think ever happened. Unless there's another call or two, maybe we should just kind of.
Oh, look, Rory's thinking.
Joey, yeah, I'm thinking really hard.
His,
Joey had something to say.
Talk
about After Earth.
Head. After Earth. Oh,
is that the Gary Whitta one? I have not followed much about the After Earth, unfortunately. I'm sorry, Gary, if you're watching this, but all I know is that Gary Whitta has written a script that he and M. Night Shyamalan are working on, and I believe
I'm very excited about that.
Will Smith is going to be involved in. If Gary's in the chat or something, hopefully he can explain it better than I have, because I apologize, Gary. I've not followed.
Gary wrote Book of Eli.
Yes,
and another sort of.
He's working on a TV show now too. He got that sold, so he's legitimate Hollywood personality. I'm trying. I felt weird that the Gary thing was announced after I decided to talk about this book, because I don't want to. I'm not even believe that it's worth insulting M. Night Shyamalan. I don't believe his last few films have been good, but he has laid the framework of a career that could be very long and profitable. Not profitable, but
or it could be a cautionary tale.
It could be a cautionary tale. But it could. I'm hoping. I hope Lucas makes good movies from now on. You saw he was going to retire and make like smaller movies.
Yeah, and he's like, no, I'll make Indy 5.
I'll make Indy 5, and then I'll do my works of passion, my hard works or whatever. And I hope he makes interesting, fun movies. I don't. Again, after the prequels and after some of the other stuff he's been in, I don't have a huge amount of faith in that. But dude made THX 1138. Dude made American Graffiti. Both pretty good, interesting, compelling movies. He made the first Star Wars too. If it was saved in editing or not, that's still a movie that is in his hands. So I don't know. And M. Night Shyamalan has proved that he has the ability to make fantastic, compelling, popular entertainment. So,
and that's rare. There's like 5 people that do that consistently.
Spielberg, I think Abrams is well on his way to being the next guy to do that. Beyond that, like Ridley Scott, but even
James Cameron.
James Cameron, yeah. No matter what you think of
it. There's definitely, it's hard to make big blockbusters that, everybody sort of digs. And the fact that he did the vast majority of them without special effects until this last run.
Yeah.
It was kind of neat. I don't know.
Well, how are you feeling, Dave? You feel like wrapping it up a little bit?
I've been podcasting a long time.
You have been podcasting a long time.
This is.
I'm talking a long time. I've been holding this thing in my ear for a long time. I'm just going to keep it here.
Changing my brain from fake knowledge to real knowledge.
Well, I hope that you had a good time talking about crazy stuff and then Shyamalan. And again, we're always trying to come up with new premium stuff to do for you guys. So hopefully, Whiskey subscribers appreciate the fact that
I'm going to go home and watch Lady in the Water in French.
In French with English subtitles.
Something, yeah, if I can.
Well, we appreciate you guys' time, and again, we'll try to figure out the format today. I basically showed up this morning, thought we were going to do a podcast, and then it wound up being like a video thing. So I wish you had more movie clips to talk about.
But
with you guys.
But you dressed so nice, right? You're looking sharp.
I had to do a video shoot today, so I'm always trying to dress up a little bit then.
That's it. Close it.
That's it. Close it. So I'm going to close this down. I can't even look at it anymore. So thank you guys for showing up. I know it's been a long day of podcasting. Reddit should be back up by now. So go back to screen.com and
it's
look
not
at
Disney, but it's something.
And we'll be back next time here on screen.com talking about somebody else. Frankenheimer.
Frankenheimer would be fun.
All right. We'll see you guys around.